if you're having kids ask questions, I would schedule to be over by 10:05 because he wants to be in his car by 10:15.
Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. Please find seats. Gentlemen walking down this aisle, please find seats in the front. We're going to begin right now. Okay, good morning, everybody. Shh. We have If you haven't found a seat yet, please do so immediately. We are beginning right now. I need quiet in the room. I'm going to count backwards from 3, and then I want silence. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. We have an extraordinary opportunity this morning, as you know. Last night at the school dinner, we honored Mr. Natan Sharansky, a hero of the Jewish people who doesn't like to hear us talk all that much about his heroism. So I'm going to keep it very brief right now. As you know, Mr. Sharansky was a refusenik, a prisoner of Zion, somebody who spent 9 long years in Soviet prison, much of it in solitary confinement, for the crime of being defiant and standing up for his Judaism. We have an extraordinary opportunity today to hear more from this hero of the Jewish people, who since that day when I was a sophomore in high school and had been released from the Soviet prison, has been an outstanding champion for the Jewish people, fighting for an end to anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and for human rights broadly speaking. On Friday, we had the opportunity to hear from Ms. Rachel Sharansky-Danziger, Natan's daughter, who spoke to teachers and to some students. And this morning, she is here as Natan Sharansky's daughter and will be interviewing him for you. I'm going to ask everybody to please be completely attentive to be able to give kavod to our guests and to learn and be inspired from them. If people have questions, I'm going to ask you to come over to the side and you'll come to me and review the question with me, and then we're going to have opportunities for you to ask the question, to stand up here on stage and ask questions as well to Mr. Sharansky as part of the program. So again, if you have those questions, you'll come to the side to me to raise that. Ladies and gentlemen, please give proper kavod to Rachel Sharansky-Danziger and Mr. Natan Sharansky.
Good morning, SAR. Wonderful to see you. And we'll jump right in. And I'll say this, that Abba, when you were the age of these wonderful young men and women, your life was very different to theirs. Your aspirations were very different to theirs. And before we delve into your Jewish journey and the journey towards belonging and towards freedom, to ask if you can share with us a little bit about what it was like when you, what was your life like, what did Judaism mean to you, and what were your dreams?
Well, in this age, well, we had no Jewish life, we had no Jewish schools, we had no Jewish holidays, we had no bar mitzvah, we had no brit milah, the only Jewish thing which we had, anti-Semitism in the streets, and anti-Semitism was part of Soviet government's policy. And the message from our parents was that because you're Jewish, you have to be the best in your class, in physics or mathematics or music or chess, doesn't matter in what. But you must be the best. That's how Jews succeed in spite of all. So my Jewishness meant for me that I have to train myself more and more and more in order to get to the best possible university. And so when I got there, and it really took me 3 years to prepare myself for the best Soviet university for a Jew to get in, I felt that's it. Now I can forget about my Jewishness. Now that I am in, I crossed the pale, and now everything will be easy.
Dreams for the future at this point?
And for the future was to be a good scientist, to forget about that you were born with disease called Jew, because there was nothing positive in this word Jew, which was written in the idea of your parents, and you have a lot of problems. So my dream was to become a very good scientist and forget about my Jewishness.
When did it change?
And then came 1967. Do you know what was 1967? Six-Day War. And the victory of Israel over its enemies was a great humiliation for Soviet Union, who gave a lot of weapons and money and sent so-called specialists, pilots and artillery specialists. And they said to Egypt, that is your time to do Israel. And in Six-Day War, Israel defeated all its enemies. So it was a real shock in the Soviet Union. And Soviet Union believed it was the most powerful empire in the world. And then suddenly you see that people around you, those who love you and those who hate you, they are asking how you Jews did it. And you understand, you try to run away from your Jewishness. But for people around you, you are part of Israel. You are part of that victory, for good and for bad. And you want to understand why all people around you connect you to Israel. And that's when we started reading, really in the underground, about ourselves. Books which were brought by American Jews as tourists. They were bringing us books about the history of Jewish people, the history of Zionism, how the State of Israel was created, about Jewish holidays, about Jewish civilization. And suddenly you realize that there is, if only you'll make some switch in your head, you can have a very different history, which starts not from Bolshevik revolution, from the Soviet Union, from all these purges and awful things which were in this dictatorship. Your history is much longer. It starts from exodus from Egypt. And you realize that there are Jewish people. All these tourists from America, from France, from London, from Australia, they're coming saying, oh, your parents are from Odessa. And my parents, my grandparents, they're all from Odessa. We want to help you. And suddenly you understand that there is history, there are people, and there is state, which is ready to do everything to help you, the state of Israel. And that's identity. You discover that you have identity, and you want really to be part of it.
You know, you describe the tourists bringing you the books. I think that for those of us, which I think includes all of us in this room other than you and almost, all the people younger than 40 here, who grew up in freedom, we don't really understand what it means. What does it mean that they brought you books and it was illegal? How do you bring it if it's illegal? What do you do with it? How do you pass information if it's, how do you do it?
Well, first of all, the moment you decide that you really don't want to belong to this society. So, and this society, this Soviet Union killed millions and millions of its own citizens in order to control fully their life, their minds, every step. So the moment you even decide that you are ready to meet foreign tourists, that's already you're taking risk. And definitely if you say publicly that you want to leave, you want to go to Israel, then immediately that's the end of your career, you can be arrested, you will be searched, you will be interrogated. So you must be ready for this. But the moment you start meeting with the tourists, these tourists can bring some books with them. And then you take this book and secretly read at night and then pass to other family. First of all, you don't want to keep these books at home for a long time. And second, it really works, it changes your understanding of the world. Later, when I became really activist of this movement, I was organizing to bring these books, not only through tourists, but some foreign journalists who were using diplomatic posts. I am helping them as Jewish activists and human rights activists, telling them what's happening in the Soviet Union, because the Soviet citizen is afraid to speak to the journalists. But in exchange for this, they are bringing books and some diplomats. And I have some Jewish activists who are organizing it from America. And once I sent a message through tourists to one of our people in New York, send us 100 books of Exodus, and we'll have here a Zionist revolution.
Just to clarify, you're not talking about the book of Exodus as in Sefer Shemot, you're talking about the novel Exodus.
Exodus of Leon Uris. If you read today, you'll think, well, what's so special? But that's the book about how our grandfathers from Russia, great-grandfathers from Russia, left and came to Palestine and was building the state of Israel. That's the book how people in our age were fighting for Israel. And then you connect it with the Six-Day War, and you see these young soldiers near the Kotel, famous picture of our paratroopers reached the Kotel. And you understand, they are 19 years old, and I'm 19 years old. And they're already making history. And all of what they make is passing exams. And so then you understand, you really want to be part of this great Jewish history. And that's how you start fighting.
So you start fighting by starting to learn about who you are, by making contact with other Jews, by discovering it. And with every step of the way, you're taking more and more risks. Why? What are the risks? Can you make the stakes clear to us? What would happen to you? What could happen to you?
Well, you have to know that the moment you declare that you want to go to Israel, that you really don't want to belong to this society, first of all, that's the end of all your life which you were building. You were building career. You thought that is your Jewishness, to build career. Now you throw it away. You'll be fired from job immediately. Your apartments will be searched in order to find the literature. You will be called for interrogation of KGB. KGB is secret police. Many of your friends will ask to take their name from telephone book because they don't want that KGB will find that they're in contact and they'll interrogate them also. And you have to know that you can be arrested any moment for your activity. And you go on the demonstration, and big demonstration in Soviet Union, 10 Jews standing with these slogans, give us visa to Israel, for 5 minutes. Why only 10 Jews? Because the more people know, the more chance that KGB will know. And KGB had informers. 3 million people were working as informers of KGB in Soviet Union. So you want that very small group of people will know. And then, why only 5 minutes? How long you can stand in the center of Moscow before you'll be arrested? And then you can get up to 5 years of exile. But what is the use? Because if there is one foreign journalist who will come and inform about it, and that was my role, to make sure that some foreign correspondent knows and KGB does know. So then we have demonstration of 10 people, we are arrested. BBC, Voice of America, Call Israel, Radio Liberty, they broadcast it all over the world. Next day, tens of thousands of American Jews go on their demonstrations, call to their senators, demand to take actions. American Congress passes laws which connect all the interests of Soviet Union with the freedom of immigration. That is how our struggle was developed. And KGB, of course, is warning us all the time that you'll be arrested for this. But you already feel yourself, you are part of this great struggle of Jewish people, and you are ready for everything. And one day, they do arrest me and accuse me in high treason.
So let's talk about that day for a second. On 15th of March, 1977, a group of you stay in the apartment of a friend, Volodya Slipak, and you know that you're about to be arrested because a few weeks earlier, the Russian newspaper Izvestia published a big article accusing the Jewish activist for Aliyah of being spies, naming you and others. My mother, who was already in Israel at the time, she was allowed to leave 2.5 years earlier, saw that article and immediately went to Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, who banged on the table, called all his, the main students, his Talmidim Uvhakim, to the room and told them, Acheinu beRussia besakana, our brothers in Russia are in danger and we have to fight for them. And when one of the students said, but Rabbi, what about Bitul Torah? He said, he who doesn't know when to close the Gemara shouldn't open it in the first place. So almost immediately they gathered, they collected shekel to shekel, they got tickets for Geneva. My mother was already in Geneva demonstrating, trying to influence public opinion, meet world leaders. And then on the 15th of March, a few weeks later, you walk down, you take the elevator down, walk into the streets, and a big group of KGB agents jumps on you, stuffs you into a car, and drives you to their prison, Lefordova prison, where there are 2 gates, and they're never open at the same time. So nobody can go out, like a symbol of what the Soviet Union is. And they search you and strip you and tell you that you're accused of treason, which is an accusation that can carry the death penalty in Russia, in the Soviet Union. In other words, they're telling you, implicitly, if you don't do what we say, we'll kill you. You're no longer just threatened with arrest, you're threatened with death. And suddenly, all those contacts, all those American Jews, all those tourists, all those correspondents, all this world, this big world that helped you fight for your freedom is barred from you. There's a block. And suddenly you're alone. What does that feel like? And what do you do? Where do you find the strength to keep going?
Well, a few things. First of all, you have to decide. Well, the first moment, they strip you and search you, try to show you that from now nothing, even your body, doesn't belong to you, and start interrogating. And I say to myself, whatever they do, they cannot humiliate me. Only I can humiliate myself. And that was very important rule. Like meaning, they have their own world in which they can do whatever they want. I am not responsible for this. I am responsible for what I am doing. And, well, of course, they try to convince you that if you will not cooperate, you'll be killed. But you understand, to start cooperating with them means to betray all the struggle of all the world. Jews are fighting for you, not only for you, for the liberation of Soviet Jews. If I start cooperating with them, I'll betray all this. I will again become Soviet slave, and I don't want to be Soviet slave. So I decide that how long will be my life depends on them. So I should not have it as the aim to stay alive. But whether I will remain a free person who is not giving up, that depends on me. So I am responsible for this. My aim is not to stay alive. My aim is to remain free person until the last day. And the last thing, they try to convince you that you are alone, that you are abandoned, that Jews of the world, everybody is arrested. Your friends are refuseniks, your friends dissidents, and I was spokesman of 2 movements, Human Rights Movement and Zionist Movement. They're all arrested, they say. And Jews of the world are afraid to mention my name because they know that you're an American spy. And so that is the end. And you try to convince yourself that they are lying. You simply think about all those Jews that you met who were coming from America and many other places. By the way, Riverdale was one of the centers which was sending a lot of Jews to Soviet Union. And you think about them and you understand, no, they cannot stop fighting. And then you see the long list of all the Jews from all over the world whom you met, hundreds and hundreds. They are all in one list of my accomplices. And you understand that they cannot stop fighting. And you think about all these Jewish organizations and journalists and diplomats, and of course about my wife and my friends in Israel. And you convince yourself. You don't know. You know nothing. Year and a half of interrogations, you know nothing what's happening. But in your head, you imagine the world of the struggle. What's interesting, many years after, when I was released, the world which was in my head, the world of struggling Jews of the world, it was a real one. And everything what KGB was saying, of course, was a lie.
A year and a half of interrogation after your arrest, and then they put you on trial. Obviously, it's trumped-up charges. You're not a spy. And they sentence you not to death, but they sentence you for a very long term in prison. And the trial is over. You won in the sense that you didn't break up, right? They wanted him to make some public statement that he was wrong, Zionism is bad, communism is good, so they could then use it to break the spirit of other Soviet Jews and their supporters here, for example. You won, but suddenly you realize that now you have many, many years of imprisonment ahead of you. Your victory was a moral victory, a spiritual victory, but physically you're still a prisoner and you're under their control. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in prison itself? What gave you strength there? Whom did you meet? How did your time pass there?
Well, from 9 years that I was in prison, approximately half of this time I was in solitary confinement. And if I had in my cell somewhere, it was 1 or 2 people. 405 days I was in the punishing cell, which is like real torture by cold and hunger. And it's all the idea is that you will be weakening physically and intellectually, and in the end you'll give up. So in order not to, especially in the punishing cell, where you have, where it's very cold, they take away all the warm clothes, 3 cups of water and 3 pieces of bread a day, dark, no furniture, nothing. It's a very small room. And by law, it should be no more than 15 days because it's very dangerous for the health. But they want to break you. They add another 15 days, another. When I was 130 days in punishing cell, I collapsed. Then they took me for some time to hospital, then took me back. So what you're doing in these conditions? First of all, it's very important to remember always why you're there, that the struggle continues, that every day that you say no to KGB is another day of your victory. So to live with this feeling that every day is not the day of defeat. To the contrary, that is another day of the victory. Second, you have to try to communicate with other people. Who knows how you communicate in prison? Nobody knows. Morse. That's how well, let's, what is your name? No, your. Yeah. Allah. Okay, short name. L. That's in Russian letters Allah. But you understand, so to communicate between cells is very dangerous because you'll be immediately punished. But with Morse, you can send a letter and look if the guard is near the door. So it's relatively safe, but it is very slow because you cannot simply send the word Allah because you don't know if the guy on the other side at this time can listen to you or there is a God standing near. So you have to send one letter and then to wait for the answer. It means I got it. Then another letter and wait for the answer. I got it. And in Russian there are 32 letters. And the words are very long. And the sentences are very, very, very long. If any of you will start reading Tolstoy, Dostoevsky in Russian, you'll understand. So few sentences can take you half a day in prison to talk. So it's very slow. But there is a much more effective way of talking. It's through the toilet. If you'll take water with some cloth from your toilet and your neighbor from his toilet, and you put head deep, deep inside, you can talk like by telephone. Well, better because there is always connection, always. But if the God will look there, you cannot explain what your head is doing there, yeah? So you have to be very careful. But there are three shifts. Each shift 8
Of
hours.
jailers,
Huh?
of jailers. You
Of
mean?
jailers, yeah. So every 8 hours, guards are changed. And so under the protocol, the soldier who is coming, together with the soldier who is leaving, they have to go from one cell to the other and enter this, and even if there is one person, they have to write one and write down and go to the other cell. 12 cells, there is huge lock, metal lock, and huge key, and while you're opening there is a lot of noise, and it takes at least 7 minutes to go through all the... So that is the time when you can talk through toilet. And one day, I found out that in the next cell, there is Yosef Mendelevich, another prisoner of Zion. And at one moment, he sends me by Morse that in accordance with his calculations, today is Yom HaZikaron. You know what's Yom HaZikaron? In Israel. And the day when we thought it is Yom HaZikaron, at the hour that we believed that's 11 o'clock, that's Tzfirah, siren in Jerusalem, each of us stood in his cell, listening to the siren. And we really had a feeling that we are together with all the people of Israel participating in Yom ZikaRon. And in the evening, when one shift is replaced with the other, what is happening at 8 in the morning, the evening in Jerusalem? Har Herzl, the ceremony of Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day, is coming, and Yom ZikaRon is finishing. Yeah, and that's a big ceremony in Israel. So that's exactly the time when one shift is changing to the other. So we prepared our toilets, we jumped into it, and made the speeches. And each of us was speaking how we are celebrating today, Independence Day, with all the people of Israel, and how the day will come, and we will do it in Jerusalem together with our families and with all the people of Israel.
And without your heads in the toilet.
Yeah. Okay, now your questions.
I'll say if people have questions, you should come up. Feel free. If the freshmen want to come down, you can ask questions. Anybody's got a question? Is that a question?
We'll have time for 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah, we'll have time for 2 or 3 questions. I'm going to ask a question before he gets here. It's just like, I know that you are a professional chess player.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about to what extent that chess helped you at all, any of your negotiation or thinking about your freedom.
Well, how chess helped me? Well, in punishing cell, I could play, chess is my great hobby. No, I had a theory that from the age of 5 that I was playing chess, that the taller is the person, I have to beat him, to win. And because everybody was taller, so I had to win everybody. That was my task. And then I decided to play simultaneously. And then to play without looking at the board. It was all hobby. But in the punishing cell, it's not a hobby. So I was playing and playing and playing chess in my head, thousands of games. I win all of them, and I feel myself very strong. So before you go to prison, learn to play chess in your head. Okay.
Thank you so much for coming to speak to us. I have a question regarding, it's amazing now that we have the state of Israel, and a lot of, our students, some of our students do, plan to make Aliyah, but, a lot of people in this room also plan, to have a future in America. And, there's still, even half a century later, growing anti-Semitism, it's insane. Do you think that there's a sustainable future for Jews in America? And if so, or if not, do you think what can we do to make it more sustainable and fight the anti-Semitism that could block that sustainable future?
As to where to live, look, of course I believe, I feel, I know that the best place, if you want to enjoy really the life of a full Jewish life and free person, Israel is by far the best place. I was practically, as the head of Jewish agency, as the minister of Israel, I was in all the communities. I really feel that that is the most comfortable way for Jews to live. But I do know that it's not so simple for many Jews to make such a decision. There are many family reasons and other reasons why people live in different countries. And American Jewish community was for all these years a very strong Jewish community. And I always say that it is good for Israel to have strong Jewish communities, and it's good for communities to have strong Israel. But now you have, not now, for the last 20 years, anti-Semitism is rising and becoming stronger, both anti-Semitism on the left and the anti-Semitism on the right. And from my experience of dealing with your anti-Semitism, it's going up when Jews are silent. And it retreats when Jews are speaking in full voice. And it is your obligation, it is your turn now to fight and not to be silent. And when Jews started fighting for Soviet Jews, many Jews here in America were silent. They were afraid to irritate their own government. Here is Rav Avivais, one of the first who broke this silence. Now, 20 years ago, I was already meeting young American Jews who were afraid to speak because it's bad for their career. But half a year ago, I met students in Columbia University, 500 Jewish students who signed the letter. We are proud Zionists, and we demand from our government to defend us as Zionists. The more Jews speak publicly, strongly, we can defeat our enemies. So those who decide to live in diaspora have to do everything to have a strong community, and community with a voice who is not afraid to fight against our mutual enemies.
Thank you.
Okay.
So your story is very inspiring, and I was getting scared just hearing your story, and I wanted to know if you were scared in Russia, and if anything scares you about the Jewish future.
Well, of course, the reality in the Soviet Union was scary, but as I said, we felt ourselves alone. Everybody had his or her agenda, how to succeed in your career, and then your life was very frightening. But the moment you feel yourself joining the great struggle, you are inside Jewish history, you are connected to Jews of the world, you're not afraid. So whether I'm scared today, I'm a very optimistic person. You cannot survive in Soviet prison if you're not optimistic. And I witnessed, I was part of it, that what a great victory Jews of the world, American Jews, had over Soviet Union. It was the most powerful empire in the world. The KGB was telling me, who is defending you? Bunch of students and housewives. That's how they saw American Jewry. And this bunch of students and housewives defeated Soviet Union. So I am optimistic because I know the strength of our people. But of course, we have to use this strength. Okay?
Thank you.
Any more questions from the audience?
There's another question? Come, Edin.
Thank you so much. How did you raise your kids, like with your Zionism, and like, do you tell them your stories about Russia, or like, well, obviously you ended up doing it, but like, how did you go for it, type thing?
Well, I think it's a question for my daughter, how I raised you. Okay, tell us.
I'll answer, and then he can make fun of my answer. We grew up, me and my sister Chana grew up knowing always about the struggle and about the victory. And we always knew that it was a victory in the plural, meaning that it was the victory of the Jewish people. It wasn't my parents' story. It was the story of Rav Avi Weiss and Rav Haskell Luckstein and Itz Greenberg and the student struggle for Soviet Jewry and the conference for Soviet Jewry and the 35s and all those different Jewish groups that participated. And we grew up hearing these stories about, what it was like in prison, but also heroic Jewish tourists carrying information back to America about the refuseniks, or about what was it like in prison, but also about how, Jews in Israel, collected money door to door to send my mom on a plane abroad to demonstrate and to meet presidents and queens and whatnot. So it was just part and parcel of our life. But there was also a particular special time when we talked about that. I mean, you all have Seder Pesach, right? Living here, you probably have two. We in Israel do one. But we also do a family Seder-like event every year on the second day of Adar Aleph, or just any Adar, if there's only one, which is my father's Liberation Day. In English, the date he was released is February 11th. In Hebrew, it's Bet Adar Aleph. And on that evening, we would set the table with the best dishes, chametz dishes, with the best food, chametz foods. Big advantage of that evening. And my father would wear a kippah that a fellow inmate made for him in prison, which he wears twice a year, in his liberation seder and in actual Leila Seder. And me and my sister would ask questions. So when we were very little, our questions weren't thoughtful like the questions you came up with. Our questions were there animals in prison? If anyone wants to ask that, we might have time for that question too. Then it was like, what was it like? What did you eat? Ima, what was it like for you traveling from place to place? We grew up a little bit. When I was your age, I really wanted to know how my parents met. What was it like for them to be separated for 12 years? As an adult, I wanted to know what was it like to rebuild life after they got reunited. And so at every stage in our life, we asked the questions that were on our mind, and we drew inspiration from the answers they gave us.
So when you go home, ask your parents and your grandparents how they were fighting for Soviet Jewry. And you'll find out that many of your families were part of this struggle. But they somehow forgot to tell you about it. We were telling to our children, with every year they grew with these stories. And it's very important to know, because that's what will give you the feeling of pride, the feeling of our Jewish power. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We get one more question in? One more question. Jordan.
Okay, also thank you so much for coming to speak. But what I was curious about is, what was your reaction when the hostages were taken and were held in Gaza for so long? Did you feel like you resonated with them? How did you feel when you heard all the stories about all of their strengths?
Well, of course, we had a very tragic period of time when our hostages were taken, and then our hearts were with them. My daughters were organizing special demonstrations, different views, but one prayer, because we all had different views how they should be released, but we all prayed. And I, of course, and I was asked many times, I was speaking how it is important for them to feel that they are not alone, that we all struggle for them. But also, when they were released, we could see how many similarities, that they, like me, had to decide that whatever our enemies are doing with us, it cannot humiliate us. It was very important for them to keep their own dignity untouched by whatever persecutions or harassments they go through. And also, I was not a religious person at all. found our history, our culture, our civilization. But in prison, you start inventing your own prayers because you want to talk to your friends, and there is no other way to talk than not through the God. And that's how I created my own prayers. That's how I was started having religious feelings. Many of these hostages who came back, who were living in the most secular kibbutzim, or in most secular surrounding, they became much more close to, or much more understanding, much more accepting while they were in prison, because they found out that there alone they want to be part of our people, and that's what connected them. So in many ways it's a similar experience, and in many ways it's a big victory of the Jewish people that they all are released.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to close off and round off this conversation, I want to ask one last question. We're facing great challenges. You talked about anti-Semitism in Israel. Even though the war, the fighting technically ended, the war is not fully resolved, and we don't know yet what's going to be. And we're facing it while also being extremely polarized and divided. In Israel, we're polarized. Here, people are polarized. Between Israel and diaspora, we're polarized. You told me many times that in the struggle for Soviet Jewry, even though now we remember it as a time of unity, there are a great many disagreements and conflicts. And I want to ask you, just to finish our conversation, reflecting back on kind of the things that divided you then and how you anyway succeeded at working together and achieving victory, can you give us advice on how to not just talk the language of unity, of lech knosset kol hayehudim, and all that, but rather to actually live it and succeed?
Well, Soviet Jewry, which looks like one big united movement, in fact, had many, many different groups and different organizations who were fighting with one another, who were not talking to one another, who were accusing one another in betrayal of the Jewish interests. And it's typical situation of Jewish groups, of us as a nation. Everybody has his or her own opinion. But in the end, we had, all of these groups had one aim: to break down the Iron Curtain, to open the gates for Soviet Jews. And here, during the struggle, you can find out that it's a big advantage that there are different groups. Because of this, you can have activist groups, like Avi Weiss was the leader of such student struggle for Soviet Jewry, which will go ahead when establishment is sleeping or is afraid to do. But in the end, it is establishment which will give the money and the connections and will organize the political pressure. So you need establishment. You have religious groups who are like Chabad, who were not participating in demonstrations because the rabbi was not permitting them to have, but who succeeded to bring books in the most closed communities. And you have right-wing groups and left-wing groups. You had communists in France who were fighting for us, and of course you have President Reagan who was fighting for us. So the fact that they were different groups, united by one mutual aim, was almost advantage. So what is really important then, to feel what is our common aim, and strengthening our Jewish identity. There are many Jews who believe that we as Jews want tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, that is the beginning and the end of my Jewishness. And I always tell them, you know what? Tikkun olam needs a lot of strength. You cannot change the world without having a lot of strength. And the source of this strength is only one: your identity, your connection to your history, to your community, to your synagogue. And so if you really want to change the world, if you want that everybody will be free, you have to be strong in your identity. And that's the message of Jewish people. We became free when we left Egypt. We became people, the first time I mentioned as people, when we left Egypt. So our identity and our freedom go together through all the history. And that's why it's very important for us to have Jewish democratic state. And it's very important for us living in free country, America, to be very strong in our identity. And then we have very different groups. But all of us feel that we have a mission in this world, one mission. And all of us are interested to be part of a very strong Jewish community.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And may we be
Natan?
zoche, may we merit, each and every one of us to add our own light and our own strength to the shared Jewish journey we're all part of. Thank you very much.
If I could ask everybody, please stay in your seats. Stand at your seats. The Sharanskys are in a rush. They've got to move on to the next appointment. So I could ask everybody to give them a round of applause and kavod standing as they escort. Rabbi Kraus leads them outside. Thank you very much. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Ladies and gentlemen, second period is going to start in about 7 minutes. Thank you very much.